Okay, the recording has now started. So this afternoon we're going to spend some time, and I want to make sure that you understand what we're going to cover. We want to talk briefly about some basic planning tools that can be used to host a successful DVAM event, which begins in just 9 days. But the good news is that you have 31 days to conduct an awareness event or activity, and it doesn't always have to be a huge, large-scale event. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also going to talk about effective ways to support survivors in speaking out and sharing about their experiences with domestic violence. And then to round things out, we're going to talk a little bit about how to interact and engage the media. And to answer someone's question, I see there's a question about whether or not closed captioning is available. And unfortunately, it's not available for this particular webinar, but we do offer that service if we're made aware of the need for that in advance. So please keep that in mind for any of the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence webinar events. So just to give you a little bit of background and history about DVAM, it initially started in 1981 as a single day, as one day that was conceived by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They still do really great work related to raising awareness of domestic violence and the many issues that intersect with it. So we've listed their website there. The intent was to connect advocates across the nation who are working to engage with survivors, with each other, with organizations and different systems who are all focused on ending violence against women and their children. The very first Domestic Violence Awareness Month was convened and observed in October of 1987, and that was also the first year that the National Domestic Violence Hotline opened up. So it was a very exciting time for all of us working to end violence. And then beginning in 1989, Congress passed Public Law 101-112, which designated October as National DVAM. And each year since then, all sitting presidents have issued a proclamation towards the end of September going into October that, again, designate October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and they touch on several key issues of that time. So, for example, in the most recent years, President Barack Obama issued a proclamation designating October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month and touched on key issues related to men as victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking, that talked about issues related to youth experience with relationship violence and love as respect, to promote the National Dating Abuse Helpline, and as well as touched on issues related specifically to the LGBTQ community. So again, we'll be anticipating another proclamation to come out this year, and we always post that on our website. So you can go to nrcdv.org/DVAM. So the three themes that are typically highlighted during National Domestic Violence Awareness Month is mourn, celebrate, connect. And that's a theme that we ourselves have also adopted here at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence to continue to promote those themes. And basically they talk about mourning those who have died and lost their lives because of domestic violence, celebrating not only those who have survived, but also how far we've come and the achievements and accomplishments we've been able to make as a really broad-based movement, and then also continuing to connect with those to end violence in intimate partner relationships. And so that can be connecting with those in your community, those who do work on a statewide and national level, helping survivors and their families to connect with resources and other supports, as well as engaging different systems that can be instrumental in helping to end domestic violence. So these three themes remain a very key focus of DVAM's events today. So I wanted to acknowledge that a moment ago I said in 1987 was when the hotline first opened, and I also want to acknowledge that last year they took their 3 millionth call to provide safety and support to those who are seeking help with domestic violence. And so also recently, in the past couple of weeks, I think as you all can imagine, calls to the National Domestic Violence Hotline have also skyrocketed given some of the events that are happening nationally that are bringing greater attention and awareness to the issue of domestic violence. So we're really happy that they're still here to be a great resource to survivors and to communities as well as advocates across the nation. And I wanted to make sure that you all have their contact information, their website information, as well as their information for their secure online chat features, which for some survivors, accessing helping support services online might be the best way for them to do so until they're able to get safely to a phone to make a phone call or to find private time away from their abusive partner to make that phone call. So we want you to know that secure online chat is a feature that's being offered at the National Domestic Violence Hotline and also at Lovers Respect. So please encourage folks to continue to reach out to the hotline for help and support. So we only have about 10 days left, and so now we're going to talk about some basic planning tools to help you host a successful DVAM event. Ivonne, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Ivonne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ivonne Ortiz. I am the Training and Resource Development Specialist at the TV, and I'm excited to be with you guys. I just remember years ago when I was working at a local shelter in North Carolina that I would wait for this time. This is the time where we all got together and, we worked together just to share some light on this terrible disease that it was plaguing our communities. And back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a lot of resources. So we were very, very creative in how we did this. And today I want for you guys to feel like, yes, there is still time. There's less than 10 days, but there's so many resources that we can offer you, and we're going to be talking about that today, that are going to make your event successful. It can be from something small or something more elaborate. Kenya, can you go to the next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. One of the great things about planning an event is just sitting down and breathe. That's the first thing. As domestic violence advocates, we're constantly working in crisis, and it's really hard when we have so many hats that we wear around, each day, around the week, around the month, and on top of that, we need to plan events. So what we're trying to do today is to share with you all of these resources that are going to make your life easier. So the first thing that we do is just why. Why are we doing this? Just sit down and plan. Most of the events that we plan is just to bring awareness to our community. But sometimes we also want to recruit volunteers. Other times we want to thank all of those that are collaborating with us to help victims and survivors of domestic violence. And of course, we always want to bring a more effective voice to survivors and their families. And this is a special time to be able to give them the space to do that. And also, you never know, to raise funds for your organization. So that's something really important. So what we need to always remember is to have a defined purpose for your event. Even if it's a small event, just sit down, think about what you want to do and how you want to accomplish it. Next slide. How do I engage my community? That's the second thing that we need to think about. It's important to host an event, but it's more important to host a successful event. So what we need to think about is who is a part of our community. What do we do in order to engage my community? We need to plan things that resonate with the community that we're in. You see a picture there that was in Atlanta, and the advocates engaged hundreds of bikers, and they had a ride just against domestic violence, little things like that. We have some other counties that are talking. I mean, let's say, for an example, my community, the Latino community, what works with your community? Well, a picnic where there's food. That's something that resonates with us, that we can relate to, because family is important, and when we're in family, we eat. So having a picnic for the Latino community. So always, always include the community that you're in, members of that community. We can host a candle vigil, but if we don't think about ways to include our community, it's not going to be successful. An example that I have is there was a program in an area that there's a large Native American community, and they have the Silent Witnesses Project. What they did, and these are silhouettes that represent each victim murdered because of domestic violence in their area. What they did was they put shawls on them. They put native clothing that the community would feel a connection with, flowers on the heads of the silhouettes, and that's how they were able to connect with that. And it was a successful event. So always, think about who is in your community and how we're going to be able to engage them. Next slide. And there's a lot of events. We're thinking, okay, we only have less than 10 days left. We don't have any money. What can I do? Well, it can be from something really small to something really big, like Kenya was mentioning. And later on, we're going to be talking about the National Call of Unity. This is a free call, but just join as an organization. One time, we didn't have a lot of funds at the shelter, so that year we dedicated a garden to all the survivors in our community. And that was a beautiful way of bringing back their families, of having something that's permanent for them in our program, and that's where we did it, in our playground. You can host a small candle vigil. I know that candle vigil sometimes take time and preparation, but what about October's almost there, October 1st, start just with the staff and with your board of directors. And then from then, you can have a larger or medium-sized candle vigil at the end of the month that will include survivors, that will include their families. That's something simple, it's easy to manage, and it's a great idea, and it brings awareness. You can also hold a moment of silence in schools or workplaces. That doesn't take a lot of planning. Set up an informational booth. Make sure, find out who else is having a conference around your area, it's having an event, and ask them if you can just set up a table and organize a purple sale at your program's thrift store. My local thrift store that I love is the Betty Griffin thrift store. They always host a sale. The last one that they had was a teal sale for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it was a lot of fun. If you wore teal, you would get a discount. If you buy, an article of clothing or furniture that was teal, you would get a discount. So let's be really creative. And also, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is a great time to thank those that are collaborating with us. So what about, baking cupcakes or cookies in appreciation for, to law enforcement, to social services agencies that provide support to our survivors. Simple things. Writing letters of recognition for those volunteers that are serving our program. You can even host a small event with training just for staff and volunteers. And all of that is going to bring awareness. And also recognizing those that are working so hard. Just a simple blurb on your newsletter. Even you can just post something on your website. And that way, everybody will feel thankful. And that's why Domestic Violence Awareness Month is so important, because we also recognize those that are doing that great job. And also we remember those that are lost their lives. So there are many simple events that you can do. Next slide.
And I just want to add to that, Ivonne, that it's also just so important to do things within your own organization to reconnect and refocus, because that's something that we try to do each year at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, is just internally as an organization and as a staff, just to reconnect to why we're doing this work and why it's so important. And we also try to use at least one day to create educational opportunities for other staff that may not have worked directly in shelter programs or in direct services with survivors. And so it's a really great time, even as an organization, to really get back on track with the work that you're doing and help reinvigorate the staff.
Definitely, and thanks for mentioning that, Kenya, because one thing that we also do at the NRCDV, we do a lot of self-care. So that's a perfect opportunity to bring somebody just to talk about, how to re-energize, just how we're feeling, anything that can improve the way that we are working, to be healthier. That's a great way, and it's a great month to do it. There are other domestic violence awareness campaign ideas, and this ones you can find on our website, the DVAP website, and we're going to have all that information later on. And this is a campaign that I'm pretty sure most of you know. This is the Remember My Name campaign, and this is a poem wrote by Kimberly Collins. And it's a beautiful poem that talks about remembering those that had died in the hands of, domestic violence. So that's a beautiful campaign. There's other ways that people have used that campaign. Usually, when you have a candle vigil, you read the names of the victims, those who have been killed with domestic violence, and then you remember. Then you have their family members, you have volunteers, you have staff read their names, and then you read the poem. So we always have their names in our hearts. So that's an important way. Also, they have replicated that poem in the different parts, like placemats, quilts, favors, anything like that. So there's
Absolutely.
a lot.
So, Ivonne, if I can just jump in for a quick second, because we are going to share an excerpt from that poem momentarily.
Yes.
But we also want to remind you all of how you can get this done in the next 10 days. As Ivonne referenced a moment ago, we have the DVAP website, and I can see a lot of questions that are coming up in the public chat related to how to engage youth and how do you connect with young people. And so so if you go into the DVAP website, you can see that we have sample forms and templates. We have a lot of media-related publications and things like that. And then we also do a lot of things using social media these days, which we're going to touch on towards the end of the presentation. But all of these events and campaigns that we're talking about can be geared towards youth and can engage youth. And so you want to think about how you might be able to connect with those in your community who are on sports teams, at the local high school, connecting with those on college campuses. And I know that Jill Morris with Know More is on the line, and she's going to talk a lot about that momentarily. So a lot of these things can be modified to be geared and focused towards engaging the youth. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to do that. And there are a lot of campaign ideas with instructional handouts that are available on the DVAP website that you can go there and you can download those instructional handouts, and then you can follow those and just make your own modifications. Several of the campaign handouts do include a few variations, but you can also do your own. We just wanted to make sure that you have some good instructions on how to get started, and that we've kind of figured out all of those little steps for you. We also have the searchable DVAM events database that you can go into, and if you're looking for things geared specifically towards youth and teens, you can look at some of the events that others are doing in all different parts of the country and see if that's something that you might want to do for yourself as well. So the next slide talks, go ahead.
Exactly. There's so many things, and Kenya's going to touch on some of the resources, and they're easy and available. You just go to the website and get great ideas on how to conduct your event.
And so a moment ago, Ivonne was talking about the Purple Ribbon campaign. So we wanted to give you some additional ideas of what you can do, because it's so easy to grab those purple ribbons and hand those out within your community. You can also order a roll of the embroidered purple ribbon stickers from us here at the DVAP, and you can use those in various ways. Jill already mentioned about hanging things on the door. You can tie them to the antenna of a police car or other vehicles. You can wear them on shirts. You can wear them at speaking events and just anywhere, really, all throughout the community. And then the empty place at the table, Ivonne was referencing this as well. As we all know, that when there is a tragic loss of life, particularly related to domestic violence, that it really does create an empty place at the table. And so we want to make sure that we continue to honor and raise the voices and the names of those victims. And one way to do that is by a couple of different ways. By creating an exhibit where you can display a place setting, and you can, again, personalize that and customize that so that it reflects the personality and some of the things that were important to the person that had been killed by their abusive partner. Or you can also order placemats from the DVAP website. We send those out in packets of 100. And we do send those out at very low cost, and in some cases free upon request. We can send those out, and you can use those in the staff break room. You can use them as placemats at any lunches or spaghetti dinners you might have. You can take those down to a local high school or any type of other university, and you can hand those out. You can even give those out at events. So the place cards, the placemats are really easy and simple to do if you don't feel like you have time or the resources to do anything else. That's one way to help raise awareness. Here's a Remember My Name poem, and I see the question asking if it could be a form of trigger, and I don't believe that it is. We've not received feedback that anyone has been triggered by hearing the poem. I've been at several DVAM events where the poem has been read or where excerpts of the poem have been shared, and I just don't remember anyone expressing anything like that. But we certainly make it available for free. You can download the poster that you see the image of here. You can download it free from the DVAP website, and that's something that you can print off and you can share at your events, or you can read the poem. So I'll read a brief excerpt from the poem now just to give you a sense of what it talks about. If my death had to show what love isn't, if my death had to show that love shouldn't hurt, if my death had to make sure another woman told a friend instead of holding it in, if my death reminds you how beautiful, how worthy you really are, if my death reminds you to honor all you are daily, then remember my name. Shout it from the center of your soul. Wake me in my grave. Let me know my living was not in vain. So that's a brief excerpt from the poem, Remember My Name, which, as you can see on the slide in front of you, was written by Kimberly Collins. And she was inspired to write this, particularly during the time when the Nicole Brown Simpson case was taking place back in the mid-'90s. And she was just really touched by a lot of the women that she heard from about their testimonies and their experiences. And she also ran a healing writers workshop, and so she heard a lot about women's trauma and their experiences, and she was inspired to write this poem. So it's something that you can read at your event and then call out the name of all of the victims who've lost their lives, both men, women, children, all of those folks that have lost their lives to domestic violence within your community or within your state. And you can read each name. You can ring a bell after reading each person's name. You can light a candle after reading each person's name. You can find, a variety of ways to honor those lives that have been lost and still do that in a very inexpensive way. And I know that when we've used this poem in the past, we also always include a candle or a bell or some acknowledgement for all of those victims whose names we do not know and all of those lives that have been lost that maybe haven't been attributed to domestic violence, but for those unknown victims that we know exist. So that's about the poem. And also, in addition to the poem that we have available on the DVAP website, we also have at least 2 universal prayers that can be shared at your DVAM event. And those, again, are available free for download from the website, and you can use those when you give a moment of silence or to open or close any of the events that you do. Ivonne mentioned earlier about the National Call of Unity. For the past 5 years, we've been hosting the National Call of Unity here at the NRCDV. Our next one is coming up on October 7th, and this is a really good time for us to come together as advocates, allies, survivors, their families. We have government officials. We have a really broad range of folks that join the call. It's free. It's 45 minutes, and we know that sometimes folks listen together in their place of business. Folks have blasted it out on the conference call line or on the loudspeakers at their job, and it's a really good time for us to come together and just, again, remember the work that we're doing, recognize how hard all of you are working. We share in a collective moment of silence, and we typically have someone read poetry on the call as well, and I've always experienced it to be a really powerful, powerful experience to know that you're connected to people all across the country and in the U.S. territories who are doing this work, and it's just a wonderful time to come together. So that's also something that you can host and organize within your own community. And again, we have that as an instructional campaign handout that's available on the DVAP website for you to download, and you can do that with your local domestic violence council, your coordinated community response team, and really just personalize it for your own community or for your own state and just have everyone participate. some of the other things that are free from the DVAP website that we've been talking about, we do have graphics and logos. Like I said, the universal prayer is available. And a lot of our flyers are modifiable, as well as our brochures are modifiable, which means that you can go in and type the name of your event. You can type the location, the directions, the contact information, anything like that. We have several different styles and types that you can access, and you can download it, type in your information, and it's ready to go straight to print. So we have graphics that have been designed by artists and other graphic designers, and we try to update that on an annual basis. So usually every year we have new updated artwork, but then even artwork that you may have used previously is still there and it's available, and you can download, customize it, and there you go. You have a flyer, it's ready to print. You don't have to pay a graphic designer. You can just print in-house for whatever you need, and it's ready to go. Same thing with our brochures. We recently updated our brochures to help end domestic violence, and then we also have one on finding safety and support. And on these brochures, you can go to, I'm going to try to highlight this here, you can go to this section here when you download it from the website, and you can enter in your own local information. And so when it prints out, it's actually, in a nice font, typewritten, that you can print out, and you can distribute those within your community. We also have them available in Spanish as well, so you can either disseminate them electronically, or you can print them out into your own information and things like that. So again, very nicely designed, easy to customize brochure. You can also contact us, and I think that we're sending out, upon request, I think about 25 free of charge. But you can double check the website and you'll see that information there. So now we are going to hear from Jill Morris at No More. And before she begins, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. Give me 1 second to pull up that information. Jill has been working in the victims' rights field since 1994. She began her career working for the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. She also served as the Director of Public Policy for the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Director of Communications for the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape. In 2006, Jill won the Amnesty International Human Rights Award for her work on the Violence Against Women Act. She currently serves as the DVAM Field Liaison for the No More campaign, and she's now going to tell us a lot more about the campaign and how her resources will be available to help you all out. I'm passing it over to you, Jill.
Great. Thank you so much. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear me since I'm on my cell phone and I just never know. No More is a great campaign that we launched officially last year, and it really is an umbrella organization of national, local domestic violence and sexual assault organizations across the country. And we actually have some international No More campaigns that are going on out there as well. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about No More. I strongly urge everyone to visit our website. There's a lot of information there. And I'm going to talk about some PSAs and some posters and some other things, and you'll find them all there as well. One of our biggest supporters is the Joyful Heart Foundation and, of course, Mariska Hargitay, who plays Detective Olivia Benson on Law & Order SVU television show, which often has storylines that are dedicated to these issues. And so it's been great to be able to work alongside celebrities as well as the Joyful Heart Foundation to bring attention to these issues. Let's see, I can go to the next slide. So like I said, No More is a unifying public awareness and engagement campaign. Really what we want to do is, normalize the conversation. We want people to talk about these issues. For a long time, it was one of those things that was hidden in the closet and behind closed doors, and people didn't talk about it. There was a lot of silence, stigma and shame around the issues, and we know that we've had a lot of wonderful resources that have come out over the past 20 years thanks to the Violence Against Women Act, to the Victims of Crime Act, to the FIPSA, which funds our domestic violence shelter programs. So we're really glad to see that we can talk about these resources in our communities through Domestic Violence Awareness Month. As you can see from the slide, No More has worked with celebrities who are easily recognizable to youth as well as people who are my age and older. I now no longer get to call myself a youth. But what we want to do is we want people to talk about it at every age level. We have campuses, we have high schools, we have several, different organizations and companies. We have over 24 corporate sponsors from Mary Kay, Ivonne, the Kaiser Foundation, Allstate, who are talking about these issues. And not only are they going to talk about the issues publicly, but also have policies inside their companies and also give funding to some of the projects that you do and some of the national projects that we see coming from the National Network and NCADV. So I just have to give a shout out to the corporate folks that give their resources and time to these issues. So one of the things that No More offers is a free toolkit. You can go to our website and go to resources, and our toolbox has loads of free stuff. We have posters, we have postcards, we have stuff in English and in Spanish. We have files that talk about what is abuse. We have information about where you can go for help, and you can take and modify these files just like you can take the DVAP files and make them your own. You can use Amy Poehler, who you can see on our screen right now. You can, if you want to have a celebrity presence at your event, you can use any of them. You don't need permission to use them. You don't need permission to put your logo on it. You just download them right off our website for free, or you can make your own. We're working with some campuses right now who are going to make their own posters that's going to have the university president or the captain of the football team or someone from the Greek community, so they're local celebrities. So if you do have someone who is a graphic designer and have the time, feel free to make your No More posters your own local celebrities. And I do think I did see someone from Pennsylvania on the webinar, and PA Says No More did an excellent job at this. Both PCAR and PCADV work together to come up with PA Says No More, and they have local celebrities as well as survivors telling their story. So some of the things in the toolkit that you can get are posters that you can hang up anywhere. Some of them are postcards. And you could do, we've had quilt campaigns and T-shirt campaigns. You can have people fill out the postcard that says, I say no more because, and they can write in whatever they want. And they can hang it up just like we did with T-shirt campaigns or the quilt campaign. I know in Maine and Alaska and some other states, the universities have taken over the art gallery space and completely wallpapered the entire gallery with these cards. Another great way to engage people is through social media. All of you are on Facebook. A lot of you are on Twitter. Recently, there has been such a media storm around what has gone on with the NFL and other sports figures. It's a great way to engage people, to use hashtags similar to why I stayed, to, hashtag or call out certain people or individual organizations to thank them for the work they do, but also say no more to stopping the violence. And young people love Instagram. They love to have their photos taken. So as you see in this slide, we have two gentlemen who have filled out the postcards and uploaded their postcards to, I believe this must be our Facebook page. And so getting young people involved to be the face of awareness, saying it's not just a women's issue, it's a young person's issue, it's a male issue, getting involved with communities of color. But social media is free, and it's easy, and it's really, really fast way to get engaged. And you can just go right to the No More Facebook page or Instagram page or Twitter page and just steal what we do. Don't feel like you have to be creative. You can just retweet or repost anything that we do if you don't have the time, and get your volunteers engaged in it. And if you have young people at home, they know what mom and dad do that work in these advocacy organizations. Put them on your Twitter account and say, go for it. Like, start the conversation and get people talking. And even if people are saying things that are not appropriate, it's a great way to educate them and say, you know, I know you want to blame the victim, but here's why we don't do that, or here's why we put the focus on. So some people get really upset and get really angry when they see people saying the wrong things on social media, but it's a wonderful way to correct those kinds of ways of thinking. So just with some things I've already gone over, sorry about that, is that the No More Toolkit, like I said, that you can co-brand them. We have sample social media posts. We also have an action and a style guide so you know how to use No More, and frequently asked questions like about No More, where it came from, how you use it, what kind of permissions you need. And we also have a new campus guide. So if you're currently working with or want to work with a local high school or college campus, we have a guide that was written by a young woman who works for No More who enacted a campaign on her campus at UCLA. And so how to work with campuses and, you know, how to reach out to them and get them engaged in the issue as well. So make sure to download the campus guide as well.
All right, thanks so much, Jill. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be on this webinar and for making that presentation. And I just want to co-sign and echo everything that she said about seeing all the different celebrities who are speaking out and saying no more. And in terms of engaging youth, there are a lot of recognizable celebrities that folks would know from pop culture. Like there's Jemima Kirk from Girls. Elijah from Girls is in there. Kiernan Shipka is part of it from Mad Men. So there are a lot of recognizable faces I think that people would see once you start to use the campaign. I know for us here at NRCDB, we've used some of their video PSAs. There's a 15-second segment as well as one that's about 30 seconds. We've used those in trainings. We've played them before the training session. We've played them at the end. We've sent them out in emails encouraging other people to watch the No More PSA and to share it with their constituents. So there are lots of different ways that you can bring No More into the work that you're doing. And as Jill said, it's very easy to co-brand. They're very open and they encourage everyone to co-brand and to use it. So please continue to seek out those opportunities. I know Jill mentioned the PA coalitions. Also, Indiana has done some great work around it. I want to say Ohio. There are several other states that are also doing some great work to do work related to No More. So take a moment and seek out what those programs are doing, and there are lots of ideas I think that you'll be able to replicate as well as create your own. So Jill, do you have anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up this segment?
No, I just want to thank you for letting us come on and just tell everyone to please take a look at the website and the toolkit. You have to put in a little bit of information before you get to it, and it looks like a lot of information, but you can download a zip file that gives you everything. And we have about over 50 celebrities, so please feel free to use those. I mean, just print those out and put those up everywhere. You'd be surprised how many people will gravitate towards a celebrity picture, and make sure to put your agency's information and hotline on there. We really want you to use that and know that those are free, and tweeting out and posting those PSAs. We're going to have a couple of new ones coming out soon. We're trying to get them out just in time for DVAM. So watch our social media for some new stuff that's coming out in the next 7 to 10 days. And they're really going to be geared towards young people. They were filmed by Viacom with some stars from MTV as well as BET. So it would be a great way to interact with those communities.
Perfect. Thanks so much. We look forward to those and helping get those out. So thank you.
Thanks.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about supporting survivors to speak out and share their story. I know a lot of you seek to engage survivors to add a different perspective and authenticity to a lot of your public awareness events that you are hosting during DVAM. So we just want to make sure that in the process of seeking out survivors to speak, that we're also being cognizant of what some of their concerns may be, and making sure that we're being responsive to those concerns. So first I want to just take a moment to think about why would a survivor survivors speak out and share their story. So there are many different reasons why survivors do that, but one of the most important things is that it can be a healing and restorative process for them. And for some survivors, it may be an opportunity to seek justice by speaking their truth to what their experience was when they may not have been able to receive justice in other forms. And also, a lot of survivors like to speak out so that they can help deter and prevent further violence from happening, or help someone who may be trapped in a violent relationship be able to take those steps to get help and to raise awareness of helping resources that are available in the community. And for some, it could be a great way to honor the memory of those whose lives have been lost. So it could be someone who is speaking on behalf of a family member or a friend who has been impacted by domestic violence or sexual assault. For example, I know More has been doing some work with Congressman Tom Reed, who had someone in his family who experienced sexual assault. And until that point, he knew about the issue, but then when it really happened in a more personal way, he was able to really pick up the calls and become much more vocal and active in speaking out against it, against domestic violence and sexual assault. And so for us as advocates and those doing this work, there's so much value in survivor stories and for survivors sharing their stories. Survivors offer us a level of expertise that as advocates we may not always have. I mean, I do want to acknowledge that a lot of us doing this work have experiences as survivors, either as, children who grew up in violent homes or someone that's been in a violent relationship, but then there are also some of us who have not. And so we can learn a lot from survivors about their experiences, the helping resources that were available, and also we can just really understand how we can be of better service to them by changing our systems, our policies, our legislation, and various responses to domestic violence so that ultimately we can prevent domestic violence from happening and help save more lives. So out of all of this, we decided a few years ago at the NRCDV to create some speakers guides that we've created both for advocates as well as those guides that can be given out to survivors, and they're called From the Front of the Room. These guides have been translated into Spanish and Arabic, and we wanted to create these guides to make sure that when we're including the voices of survivors in our work, that we're making sure that we're supporting them in ways that are safe and that really give them a sense of this being a positive experience for them. We don't want to just ask survivors to come forward to speak out and share their story and then just kind of say, okay, thank you, goodbye, go home. We really want to make sure that we recognize that some of these things can create additional trauma when survivors are speaking out about these events, whether they happened many, many years ago or a few months ago. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing any safety concerns that may be present. We also want to make sure that we are supporting them through any emotional triggers that may have come up. And especially when it comes to considering safety. For some survivors, even if their abusive partner has not been in contact with them for many years, because they start to speak out, they could then again start to be harassed or threatened or stalked by the abusive partner or ex-partner or by their family. So we want to make sure that when survivors come forward and they want to speak out at these events, that we do talk to them about safety as well as possibly the safety of their children if they choose to speak out. So one of the first ways that we want to do that is by including survivors in planning how their story will be shared. So you want to first help them visualize a very successful event and also explore what that might look like. Does that mean they are standing in a room speaking in front of a group of people? Does that mean they are one person on a panel that maybe they feel more safe and comfortable speaking in that way? Could it be that they record remarks or comments prior to the event so that their voice can be heard even if they don't feel comfortable being physically present? Could they possibly want to write a blog post or participate in a social media event? So you want to make sure that you're giving these options to survivors so they can participate in a way in which they feel most comfortable. And then you also want to work with them to help identify which aspects of their story they may share. For some survivors, they may not have shared everything with their family members or with certain friends or even with their children as they become adults. So there may be certain pieces of their story that they don't feel comfortable sharing, and that's okay. So you want to make that clear to them up front that they don't have to tell everything. You know, it is their personal experience and their personal business. And so you want to let them know that it's okay to have some parameters and some guidelines related to the amount of information they share. Because ultimately we want to make sure that we're supporting their own self-care needs as well as being supportive in their own healing process. And as I stated a moment ago, to identify the types of venues and events that would be most appropriate for different types of survivors. There's also another resource that's been developed called Conducting Safe, Effective, and Ethical Interviews with Survivors of Sexual and Gender-Based Violence. So that's a great resource that talks about different techniques you can use if you are videotaping or audio taping someone who's sharing their story, helping really prepare the interviewer to speak with someone who may be a survivor of sexual or domestic violence, so that they're not posing questions that are victim blaming, so they're not trying to sensationalize the story just to get clicks on their website and things of that nature. So it's really helping to understand what is the purpose in trying to ask certain types of questions and what do you hope to gain. So really trying to help interviewers and those talking with survivors to be more ethical in their practice of doing so. So one thing you also want to make sure that you do with survivors is to help them explore, am I ready to tell my story? Especially speaking out publicly can bring greater attention to that survivor, and there may be things that they share in the process of telling their story that they've not disclosed to others, which could impact their relationships within the community, within their family, within their place of business. And so sometimes nowadays with social media as it is, it's so quick for a story to go viral or to gain national attention or even more attention than a survivor initially thought about. So you want to make sure that you're talking with survivors about all of those unintended consequences and just making sure they're prepared to address those issues if they come up. We also want to make sure that survivors are doing it out of their own need and not something they're feeling pressured to do, whether by family or if they feel that they owe the program something or they owe something to the shelter, so they want to stand up and they want to speak out and share their story. So you really want to make sure that they're doing this of their own volition and that they're not feeling forced or coerced into doing it. And then you want to have them think about who can help answer that question for them. Is it speaking with, a close friend or a close family member? Is it talking to the adult children about, these are some things that happened when you were younger that I want to share and speak out at this event. How would you feel about that? So involving others in making that decision. Or it could even be speaking with a paid counselor or an advocate to just kind of process through this whole experience. And then, as I stated earlier, you want to note any ongoing risk from the person that may have been abusive to make sure that we have all safety planning protocols in place. So as advocates, our role is really to help survivors process. We want to be supportive. We want to help them make connections to other survivors who may also be speaking out. So whether that's through networking, through a speakers caucus, a speakers bureau, you want to find various ways to help survivors connect to others that are doing the same thing so they can say, what was this experience like for you? Did you find it helpful? Is there anything you would do differently? You want to consider all of those sorts of things. And then you also want to make sure that we're adequately compensating survivors for sharing their story. So we're not just here to have survivors come and speak out and take all of their knowledge and expertise, but we really want to try to make sure we can compensate them and appreciate them for doing something very difficult, to stand up and tell people about this very personal thing that happened to them. And so whether we're providing them with financial compensation, covering the cost of a per diem depending upon how long they're away, helping to cover the cost of child care if needed, making sure they have transportation. And it may be different what the needs are for each survivor. They may be different, but you do want to at least have that conversation. And even if it's a small stipend, you want to try to compensate survivors for speaking out and sharing their story at your public speaking events. So we want to be aware of that. When we start to think about how to help survivors select content that would be appropriate to share, for a lot of survivors, they may have a huge, long history of experiences that they could talk about. And so you want to try to help them kind of narrow their focus a little bit, and depending upon the audience that they're speaking to, they may want to select certain pieces of information or certain parts of their story to share. So ultimately, you want to remember that it is a survivor story. So we don't need to dramatize it, to embellish it, or do anything of that nature. But we may want to suggest that they do an outline of what they want to say and just kind of help hone their remarks in so that they're very focused in their presentation to the group. And that could also be helpful so they don't get off track or become distracted by audience members' responses to what they're saying. So sometimes having notes right there in front of them can be really helpful. Another thing, too, related to that, actually, is you want to talk with survivors about whether or not they will take questions from the audience. And so you want to make that decision prior to the speaking engagement or prior to any type of social media engagement and things like that. Some survivors will say, no, I'm not going to take questions because just speaking up and sharing their story is hard enough to do without having to then parse through comments that they may not know what the response is going to be or the direction the questions would go in. Another option might be to have audience members write a question down on an index card, have an advocate collect those questions, and then the survivor can make a choice around which questions they will answer or not answer. So the bottom line is you want to work in partnership with survivors to make sure that it's a really powerful and supportive experience for them versus something that's going to be triggering or where they're going to feel like they're being blamed for what's happening or they're going to feel like people in the audience are just really insensitive and negative towards them. That's not the type of experience we want for survivors to have. So going back to the helpful content, like I said, we do want to think about, are there specific things that survivors can share with us to help us learn from their experience, such as what helped or hurt along the way? Are there snapshots that they want to share of the things that they experienced that would help the audience understand what they've gone through? And then we also maybe want to think about what's a common thread that can be used to create connections between each piece of the story that's being shared. And so if you're speaking to a particular audience, then you may want to have the survivor tailor their comments for that audience. For example, if you're speaking with law enforcement, then talk about things that were helpful or hurtful when the survivor engaged with the criminal justice system or called law enforcement or 911 for help. That would be very relevant to that audience. If you're speaking with a particular community, then maybe talking about how that person's culture and identity impacted the helping resources they were able to access or how that may have impacted their decision-making going forward. So you want to be able to just think about who the survivor is and what they would like to offer and share with the audience to make sure that the content is helpful and useful. So here's an example on the screen in front of you about survivor support, and this is from the North Dakota Council on Abused Women's Services and the Coalition Against Sexual Assault. It says, what didn't help in my healing? It didn't help when people looked away and pretended that the abuse wasn't happening. One of the most painful memories was when my husband, this slide just changed. One of the most painful memories was when my husband was beating me in front of some of his friends and they didn't do anything to help. They just sat there in my living room watching some game on TV while my husband assaulted me. That was an extreme example, but there were others. My family and friends knew what was going on, but they didn't ever say anything to me like, you don't deserve this. So that can be really helpful content for audience members to hear, is the understanding of the shame, the isolation, and humiliation that this survivor experienced and why that was particularly traumatic for her. Another example of helpful content related to systems response, and this comes from an elder survivor of abuse, and it's from In Their Own Words, Domestic Abuse in Later Life, and it says, I think you have to have people around you that know the same things that you're going through because people don't understand. It would be nice if a social worker came with the police because when the police take your son and they handcuff him and take him out of the house, there's nobody there for you to put their arm around you and say, it's going to be all right. What can I do for you? You're left in a kind of empty situation. So I think that's really helpful content for us to understand, for us to know what would be most helpful to survivors at that moment when they do call law enforcement and the abuser is taken from the home. And it could also re-energize our efforts to make sure that we have advocates that are able to go out and do ride-alongs with law enforcement or to have someone on call 24/7 on our hotline to be able to respond to these types of things as they come up. So the information can be helpful in determining what types of services we need to provide, but then also in reinforcing that we are doing the right thing with the services that we are providing. So if there are any questions about supporting survivors to speak out, please feel free to post those in the public chat. I also want to let you know that we do make the Survivor Speakers Guides available both in hard copy as well as available online for free download. And if you would like copies of the Survivor Speakers Guide for advocates or for survivors, we can send those out to your program. Information to access that is on the DVAP website, or you can email me at the email that you received about this webinar, and we can send out those guides to your program. And like I said, they are available in Spanish as well as in Arabic, and we typically will send out, say, one guide for advocates and then about 10 guides for survivors, because we do want you to be able to give those guides to survivors to have in their hands to read through and think about how they want to move forward if they choose to speak out about their experiences. So please feel free to reach out to us for those resources. So now we're going to spend the last bit of our time together talking about working with the media. And so there are lots of different ways to engage the media, many of which we've already talked about in terms of social media itself, but then there are also public service announcements available, newspapers and magazine articles, as well as television and radio news programs. So the name of the resource that I just referenced was called From the Front of the Room, and it's the Survivor Speakers Guide. But you can easily email us and say, do you have those survivors guides? And we'll know what you're talking about. We'll send those out. So they're very useful tools to give to survivors as well as advocates that are doing community outreach, doing training, that are organizing volunteers, to really help give greater guidance to those that are going to speak out and share their story. So we make sure that they're not traumatized in the process of doing so. And a really important part of it is also helping them make sure they have a self-care plan in place for after the speaking engagement to make sure that they do some restoration for themselves. So as I said, with engaging the media, there are many different ways that you can do that. And I know for us here at the NRCDB, and I'm sure this is true with No More, as well as other state coalitions and local programs, that once October kicks off, you start to get a lot of calls and requests for speaking events or to make a comment on a story or to be interviewed for the latest thing that's happening. So we want to make sure that you have some sense around how to engage and interact with the media. So one of the most important things is to make sure that you have the basic details of the type of interview. So how long is it going to be? Is it going to be on radio, and will it be live? Is this something that will be printed in a newspaper? Are they really asking just for a quote? I know a lot of times with us, we'll check to see, have you talked to other domestic violence programs, or are there other programs that you're speaking with? Do you have a deadline in mind? So you just want to at least have a sense of, what are the basic details they're asking for, and what's the angle they're going for, so that you can have some facts in place. Sometimes I know I've been contacted by reporters, and they say, well, I just want to ask a few questions about your organization, or a few questions about, October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I at least go ahead and pull a few stats, because they're almost always going to ask about prevalence, so you want to do that. And then you almost always want to ask about what's happening very locally and very specifically within your community or within your state. And then you want to, again, prepare for the interview, or if you're having a discussion on Twitter, you want to go ahead and prepare in advance to make sure that you've pulled out all the links to the resources you want to reference, that you've pulled together your statistics and you have the sources available and things of that nature. You want to make sure to do that. When you're engaging with the media, you want to speak with some authority and clarity and energy. So you don't want to be overly excited, but you also want to have some affect in the process of speaking with them. And then try to always emphasize your main points and your key messages. So even if the person is trying to kind of pull you into a different direction to possibly dramatize the story or to change the focus, you always want to be able to pivot back towards your key message of what it is you're trying to share and talk about during Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so it's very important that you can do that. And as it says here, you want to just keep in mind that nothing is ever off the record, which can be hard to do, because you're trying to build rapport with this reporter, or if it's a radio station, you're trying to build rapport as you're talking. But you just want to keep in mind that anything that you say may be used in the story without the additional context of what was happening in the conversation. So try to be a little bit careful around the things that you share and that you say to try to avoid any snafus and mishaps if possible. So with the media engagement tools, we do have several things available on the DVAP website that we're trying to share with you. So we have a list of media terminology. We have tips on how to prepare your own media list, and then also some tips on how to generate coverage and draw media attention to your story. These materials were developed with the communications director who had a long history of work with politicians as well as with other organizations, and so these were some materials and tips that they shared with us that we thought would really be helpful for you in terms of engaging the media in your area. We also have a sample press release template for DVAM that you can download and customize on your own. And then, as mentioned earlier, the No More PSAs are fantastic to download for print, for video, to use on the web. Even if you want to just change your Facebook cover, they have those available. If you want to post anything on Tumblr or Pinterest or other blogs, you can access their materials to do that. And like Jill said, you can print those out as well. But even just sharing their 15 or 30-second videos can have a huge impact because people can continue to repost and share those on their own networks. So you reaching out to 500 people within your network, those 500 people might then be able to reach 10,000 people within their own networks. And so it just can continue to grow and grow and grow and have that ripple effect. And as Jill is posting here in the public chat, you can also go on to No More and you can add your photo to the No More gallery, which would be a fantastic thing to do. There's so many folks that have posted their images to the No More gallery, and it could be really it could be empowering to feel like you're such a part of a huge community of others that are really doing this work and that are engaged and they're really saying no more to domestic violence and sexual assault. So please go on there and upload your images. There are even some who have done it as a family or as a group of colleagues. They've done that. So you want to make sure to check out some of the images that are there, and you can either get your own ideas or you can share some new ones. For example, I know some folks who might take a picture with their pet and they might upload that to the No More gallery because, as we all know, pets can be victims of family violence and they can be abused by a perpetrator in order to keep a survivor trapped in an abusive relationship. So there's a lot more work that's being done to shelter pets and families together, as well as to address the issue of animal abuse as it intersects with domestic violence. So those are some different things you can do. One thing I really want to point out to you, we have 11 different, actually I think it might be 12 now because I think we added one, but we have three-legged stool talking points forms, which have been created very specifically to help you with your media strategy. So each of the talking points forms answers a question that typically comes up during DVAM. So questions around prevalence, the impact on children, the cost to society for domestic violence within specific groups. So what you can do is you can download these forms. They're usually, the talking points forms are 2 pages. We have 3 key specific points as well as space for you to write in some of your own notes. But basically those three-legged stool talking points forms have been created to help you stay on message when speaking with the media. So we have the 3 key points. We have supportive facts and statistics that we have researched ourselves, so we know they're high-quality, credible sources. And on the second page, we include the listing of the sources for those stats that are included. So you have your 3 points that you can bring up, and so anytime the reporter or whomever you're speaking with tries to pull you in a different direction, you can just pivot right back to one of these 3 talking points, and you can stay on message. And then we've also included a space for you to be able to write in some anecdotes about a survivor experience or what this means for you in your particular community or any other type of way or story that you can use to illustrate the points around what the three-legged stool talking points form is about. So that's a great resource that we have available on the DVAP website. You can download those, take a look at them, and then use them and customize them for your own use within your community. So we're going to wrap up there. Again, I just wanted to show you the Domestic Violence Awareness Project website and make sure that you are aware of all the resources that are there. We provide a lot of tips and tools that are free, that are downloadable, that are high quality, and that have been well researched. So please feel free to visit the DVAP website. We also have a section of the website right here that you can see where it will indicate the resources that we have available in a specific language. So, for example, we have some materials available in Arabic, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So if you click on that link, it'll take you directly to those materials so you can see what we have available. We also give reference to other culturally specific institutes that do more work within those communities. And as I said earlier, we do have the online store where you can go to see the products and resources that we have available. A lot of them we provide at cost or they're free of charge. So please check those out. And we have posters, magnets, purple ribbon stickers, note cards, placemats, guidebooks. So we have lots of different things that are available to you because we want to make it easy for you to put on your Domestic Violence Awareness Month event. We want to make it easy, we want to make it low cost, and we just want to make sure that you have the things that you need. Also, if you have any feedback for us here at the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence about our Domestic Violence Awareness Project and the resources we make available, please feel free to email me, and I'm going to give you my email address here in the public chat. You can email me any feedback that you may have. I mean, there could be things that we're missing out, things that would help you do your jobs a lot better, and we want to know that so we can be responsive. As I said earlier, we have the campaign ideas, so there are instructional handouts that you can download that give you step-by-step ways that you can put on an awareness event. We have the artwork that's free, easy to download, can be modified, and then we also have our DVAM events here that you can go on and you can enter your own DVAM events, or you can look for other events in your area or in a state. Maybe you're traveling during October, so you want to go visit another program and see what they're doing, so you can do that. So unless there are other questions, then we'll get ready to wrap up. I think I saw one question in the public chat. I'm not sure if I answered it, so I'm going to scroll back up. It says, what can be some of the best impacts of talk shows on the radio and TV that really help the victims and survivors? So if you can clarify your question a little bit in the public chat, that would be great. But I will say that there are a lot of programs that I've seen where they'll do a few different things. So I've seen some talk shows where they'll have, and actually I think this was last year or the year before, some of our board members and some of our staff went to see the Katie Couric show because they were speaking about No More. And so we were there to, provide our support, of course, but then also to make sure that people knew about the resources that were available. And that causes an uptick in the calls to the National Domestic Violence Hotline and Love is Respect. I know there are a lot of times on MTV when they play some programs that may depict violence or difficulties in teen dating relationships, that they also will post and share the number to the National Domestic Violence Hotline and Love is Respect, and they'll encourage anyone that may be watching to call and reach out for help, and that makes a huge difference. And so the same thing in your community. Anytime that you're out there speaking about ending violence in relationships and keeping families together in ways that are safe and healthy, where everyone can be treated with respect and live free of violence, those are great opportunities to speak out and get calls to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, because those are going to drive the survivors to your programs for support within your community. And I see that a comment about I've heard many frustrated advocates speak about the huge coverage given to breast cancer awareness during October, but less coverage to domestic violence. Can you talk about some examples of collaboration with the pink juggernaut of breast cancer awareness? That's fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Ben, because it is, it's so funny. A few years ago, we actually did a survey to programs around whether or not we should move the month from October, in part for this reason, but for other reasons as well. And what we found is that there are a lot of programs that will partner together with their local breast cancer awareness group, and they'll do joint activities because ultimately both of them are about ending an epidemic that disproportionately impacts women. Breast cancer disproportionately impacts women, and domestic violence, women who report incidents of domestic violence are disproportionately female who are being abused by a male partner. And so you can use this as a women's health issue to talk about how can we improve the health outcomes for women. And so you can talk about breast cancer awareness and domestic violence by doing both of those things. So maybe pulling it together under the umbrella of health. You can also just come together around both of you are concerned about how we can make lives better and safer and healthier for women. So that's another way to come together. So there are lots of programs that will do joint events. And you can even put on a fundraising event together and split the proceeds. You can pass out pink ribbons and purple ribbons together. I mean, there are lots of different ways to incorporate the messages of keeping women healthier and safer together. And now I see a question that says, do I know of any TV shows that are planning to have special programs about domestic violence? Offhand, I don't know of any that are doing that, but I do know that Law & Order SVU has frequently been doing Twitter marathons where they'll do a marathon about a particular topic and theme that runs through all of the SVU episodes that they play on that day. You can stay checked into the No More website because typically No More will send out information about that. And so there might be one day, for example, in August, they did a day where they played a lot of shows about male victims and the impact of violence on men, and they would do a Twitter-thon in conjunction with doing that episode. And so, as Jill said earlier, that they're going to release some new PSAs from celebrities on MTV and BET. I think they're likely going to be doing the same thing in October, so that's one place to check. I know a lot of talk shows, and unfortunately I'm working during the day, so I don't always get a chance to see them, but I know there are a lot of talk shows that will have folks on there talking about domestic violence. I've seen this on Wendy Williams, on Katie Couric, The Ellen Show, so there are lots of different talk shows that will have folks on there. Even The View and I think The Chew will have people on there talking about these types of events. And I can only imagine with the national coverage that's happening now to address domestic violence, I can imagine that there'll be a lot more shows that will be speaking about this issue. And if you can see in the public chat, Jill is posting that on October 4th, Lifetime is running a special domestic violence movie. And then the USA Network is hosting a 12-hour Law & Order SVU marathon with special domestic violence and sexual assault hotline PSAs. So there will definitely be things coming up. So please continue to check back with No More. Sign up for their newsletter. You can also sign up for the NRCDV's newsletter as well, and we'll be sharing that information also during the month of October. So if you have any more questions, please continue to post those in the public chat, and we'll get to them. And as I said, I'm posting on the screen now the contact information for the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, and you can reach out to us via our online TA request form, or you can email me directly if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. But the DVAP website, we really do want it to be a resource to all of you as you're putting on your public education and awareness events, not just in October, but all throughout the year. You can contact us at any point in time if you need posters, note cards, magnets, purple ribbon stickers and things of that nature, or if you feel like there's a key issue that we're missing that we need to do a talking points form on, we'll do that. Or if you have a campaign that you put on in your community or your state that you feel is really successful and you think others would like to replicate that, please send us the information and we will work with you to create a handout so others can do that campaign in their areas as well. So we're all about partnership and collaboration here at the NRCDV, so please reach out to us if you want. We're also on Twitter, so we are at National DVAM on Twitter. We're also on Tumblr, so we have a National DVAM Tumblr page. We have an NRCDV Instagram, and then, of course, you can find us on Facebook at bonnet.org, and you can also find Bonnet on Twitter as well. All right, so I'm loving all this interaction from the American Samoas. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your questions and comments. So unless there are any more questions, we'll go ahead and get ready to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining our webinar today. We hope that you found this information useful and that you have some great tools that you can quickly go online and access for free, download, and start getting information out and get the word out for your DVAM events. And like I said when we first started, you have 31 days in October to do an awareness event. So even if it's just posting one fact a day about domestic violence and its impact, or sharing how people can access helping resources, then please do your part to raise awareness of this epidemic and to help create change. The PowerPoint slides are available. I'm posting the link now in the public chat. I know some folks were saying that they had a hard time accessing them. The file is pretty big because of the number of images, so it may take a few minutes to download, but if for any reason you're not able to access the PowerPoint slides, you can certainly email me, and I will send those out to you in a different format. I think I'll do a Dropbox link, so that might be easier for folks to access it that way, but I'll send it out shortly after we end the webinar today. So thank you all for joining us, and have a good afternoon.